My father looked at the blue envelope under my arm, then looked at my dress and said, "Nora, the dining room is for people who matter tonight. You can sit downstairs with the staff," he said it softly. That almost made it worse. No shouting, no shame in his face. No pause where a real father might hear himself and stop. Just a small smile, one hand on my shoulder, and the other pointing toward the basement stairs. Behind him, the ballroom of the Blue Heron Inn glowed with candlelight. Crystal glasses flashed on white tables. A violin played near the fireplace. Guests laughed under the old oak beams my grandfather had carved by hand in 1971. Every chair in that room had a blue ribbon tied around it. Subscribe to this channel for more emotional stories about family secrets, betrayal, boundaries, self-respect, and finding your voice when the people closest to you try to silence it. Give it a like and tell us where you are watching from. Every chair except mine. My brother's chair was there, my aunt's chair was there, my cousin Victor's chair was there, and Victor had once stolen the inn's payroll money and blamed it on a cashier who got fired. Even the local bank manager had a seat with his name printed in gold. But I, the daughter who spent 18 months saving that inn from tax sale, was being sent below ground to sit near the laundry carts. I looked at my father and asked, "Downstairs?" He smiled wider, like I was being slow. "It's not personal. Tonight is for investors, board members, and close family, close family." Those two words landed in my chest like ice water. I was 34 years old, and in that moment I understood the rule of my family. I was close enough to fix things, not close enough to be seen. The blue envelope under my arm was thin, but it felt heavy. Inside was the document they had been asking about for weeks. They thought it was just another form, another paper Nora handled, because Nora was good with boring things. They had no idea what was really inside. They had no idea that the same envelope they wanted me to hand over quietly would decide who controlled the Blue Heron Inn. And they had no idea that if I walked down those basement stairs, I would not be coming back up as the same woman. So before I tell you what I did, let me ask you something. If your family only calls you when something is broken, but hides you when the room is full, are you loved, or are you being used? If that question hit something real in you, like this video, subscribe, and stay with me until the end. Because this is not just a story about family, it is about paperwork, power, and the quiet danger of signing your life away for people who would not save you a chair. My name is Nora Vale. I am not rich. I am not famous. I am not the loud one in my family. I work as a records officer for the county. That means I spend my days with land files, old permits, tax notices, probate forms, and the kind of dusty documents people ignore until ignoring them becomes expensive. Most people think paperwork is boring. They are wrong. Paperwork is where people tell the truth by accident. A smile can lie, a family dinner can lie, a speech can lie, but a deed, a lien notice, a tax record, or a signed agreement will sit quietly in a folder and tell you exactly who owns what, who owes what, and who has been pretending. That is how I found out the Blue Heron Inn was almost gone. The inn sat on a hill outside Bellwether, North Carolina, with a long porch facing the river. My grandfather, Samuel Vale, bought it when it was just a half-burned boarding house with raccoons in the attic. He fixed it room by room. My grandmother cooked breakfast for guests. My father grew up carrying suitcases and polishing silver. By the time I was a kid, the Blue Heron was the place everyone used for weddings, reunions, Sunday lunches, and Christmas photos. My father called it our legacy. My mother called it our blessing. My older brother Callum called it the asset. That should tell you everything about Callum. Callum was 37, handsome, loud, and always 5 minutes away from his next big plan. He wore expensive watches, leased cars he could not afford, and used words like vision whenever someone asked him for numbers. I used numbers. That was why my family called me. Not because they liked how I saw things, because I saw the things they did not want to deal with. The first call came 18 months before the anniversary gala. It was a Sunday night. I was folding laundry when my mother called. "Nora," she said, "your father needs you to look at something. Not hello, not how are you. Your father needs you to look at something." That was my family's version of affection. I drove over after work the next day. My parents lived in the small cottage behind the inn, the same one my grandparents had used after they stopped living upstairs. The kitchen table was covered with envelopes, brown envelopes, white envelopes, pink warning slips. My father sat at the table with his reading glasses in one hand and a look on his face that said he wanted the problem solved without having to fully understand it. Callum stood near the stove, texting. My mother kept wiping the same clean counter. "What is all this?" I asked. Dad tapped one envelope. "County nonsense." County nonsense usually means someone ignored 3 official notices. I opened the first letter, then the second, then the third. The inn owed back property taxes, a stormwater fee, 2 permit fines, and an old contractor judgment that had been renewed after nobody responded in court. Total amount due, with penalties, was $68,000. I looked up. How long have you known? Dad waved his hand. They send these things all the time. No, they do not. Callum looked up from his phone. Don't be dramatic. We just need you to help us organize it. Organize it. That was what they called a financial cliff, an organization problem. I asked for the inn's files. Dad said they were in the office. The office was a storage room behind the front desk with broken lamps, old guest books, a dead printer, and boxes stacked higher than my waist. I spent 4 hours sorting through dust, receipts, unpaid invoices, expired permits, and mail that had never been opened. By 10 that night, I had the shape of the disaster. The inn was not just behind, it was bleeding. The insurance policy was outdated. The kitchen permit had lapsed. The roof repair from 3 years earlier had never been fully paid. The county had started the process that could end in tax sale if they did not act. My father kept saying, "Your grandfather built this place," as if a dead man's hard work could stop a deadline. That is the first adult lesson in this story. Sentiment does not stop interest. Family history does not stop penalties. And a legacy can be lost by people who love saying the word but hate doing the work. I built a plan. First, I called the county treasurer and set up a payment schedule. Second, I pulled the land records and found out the inn was still in a messy family trust created after my grandfather died. Third, I contacted the Historical Preservation Office because the building might qualify for a heritage grant if repairs protected the original structure. Fourth, I told my family the truth. If we apply for public grant money, I said. Sitting at that same kitchen table 1 week later, the inn cannot be treated like Callum's private project. Callum frowned. What does that mean? It means the money has rules. You have to use it for approved repairs. You have to keep records. You cannot take grant money to restore the building, then flip it to a developer. He laughed too fast. Who said anything about a developer? Nobody had. That was why I looked at him. His face changed for half a second. Small, but enough. I had spent my career reading small changes. A missing page. A strange signature, a number rounded too neatly. A person laughing before a question becomes an accusation. Callum was hiding something, but I did not know what yet. For the next 1.5 years, I became the unpaid engine of the Blue Heron Inn. I worked my county job from 8 to 5. Then I went home, ate whatever was easiest, opened my laptop, and became the person who kept my family's dream alive. I made spreadsheets for tax payments. I called roofers. I read grant rules. I found old photos proving the porch railings were original. I tracked receipts. I built a repair timeline. I drove to the courthouse twice during my lunch break to pull records. I even found a 1974 newspaper article where my grandfather talked about wanting the inn to stay a place for ordinary families, not just rich visitors. That article mattered. It helped the grant. I thought my father would care. He barely looked at it. Good find, he said. Good find. 2 words for 6 hours of searching. That was how my family paid me. Small words, big needs. The grant was approved in stages, not the full amount at first, but enough to repair the porch, stabilize the roof, update fire systems, and reopen the main dining room. The final stage required one more document, a protection agreement. It said the Blue Heron Inn had to stay under the family trust, or a public heritage trust, for at least 15 years. It could not be sold to a private developer without repayment and penalties. That was normal for this kind of funding. Public money comes with public rules. But the moment I explained it, Callum went quiet. Dad got angry. You're telling me the government gets to control my property? No, I said. I'm telling you that if you take preservation money, you agree not to misuse it. Callum leaned back in his chair. Maybe we should wait before signing anything. I looked at him. Why? He shrugged. Options, there it was again. Options, adults, remember that word. Sometimes keeping options open means someone wants freedom. Sometimes it means someone wants to hide a plan. 2 months before the gala, I found the plan. It happened by accident, which is how many ugly truths appear. I was in the inn office scanning repair invoices when the printer jammed. I opened the bottom drawer looking for paper and found a folder labeled beverage menus. Inside were no menus. Inside was a letter of intent from a company called Foxglove Development. They wanted to buy the Blue Heron property and turn it into riverfront luxury townhomes. The offer was huge. Huge enough to make Callum think he was smart. Huge enough to make my father forget every speech he had ever given about legacy. And there, On page 4 was a note in Callum's handwriting. Wait until grant repairs are finished. Sell after gala, clean title first. My hands went cold. They were going to use the grant work to raise the value of the inn, then sell it. They were going to let public money repair a building they planned to hand over to developers. That was not just selfish, it was dangerous. If the grant office found out, the family could owe the money back. There could be fines. The inn could end up tied in legal trouble for years. I put the folder back exactly where I found it. Then I went home and did something I had never done before. I made a copy of everything, not to attack them, to protect myself, and maybe, if I was brave enough, to protect the inn from the people who kept calling it love while planning to sell it. The gala was supposed to celebrate the Blue Heron's reopening and my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. My mother wanted candles, blue flowers, old family photos, and a cake shaped like the inn. She asked me to coordinate a few details. A few details became the guest list, seating chart, caterer, printed programs, timeline, speeches, transport for elderly relatives, donor display, and final payment tracking. Callum handled the big picture, which meant he chose a suit. The week before the gala, my mother called me 3 times a day. Nora, make sure the florist uses pale blue, not navy. Nora, remind your father about his speech. Nora, check if the mayor is bringing his wife. Nora, can you print place cards? Nobody asked where I would sit. I told myself that was because I was family. You do not ask where family sits. Family is already included. That is what I wanted to believe. On the night of the gala, I arrived early with the blue envelope under my arm. Inside were 2 things: the preservation agreement they expected, and the copied foxglove letter they did not know I had. I was planning to give my father one last chance. That sounds foolish now, but hope is not always loud. Sometimes hope is a daughter in a black dress holding an envelope, thinking maybe tonight her father will choose the truth. The dining room looked beautiful. It hurt how beautiful it was. The restored fireplace glowed. The tables were set with blue glass vases. My grandfather's photo stood on an easel near the entrance. The old windows reflected candles like stars. For a moment I thought, we did it. Then I saw the seating chart. Table 1, Edward Vale, Marianne Vale, Callum Vale, Victor Vale, Mayor Leonard Price, Mr. and Mrs. Ashford from the bank, no Nora. I checked table 2, then 3, then the small side tables, nothing. My name did not exist in the room I had rebuilt from paper. That was when Dad found me. He wore a dark suit and the smile he used for donors. There you are, he said. We need help at the entrance. I looked at him. Where is my seat? His smile froze just a little. Nora, not tonight. Not tonight, what? We need the main room to feel polished. I waited. He pointed toward the basement stairs. There's space downstairs. Staff meal is set up. You'll be more comfortable there anyway. You hate small talk. That was the lie that almost made me laugh. I did not hate small talk. I hated being invited only to work. I looked through the open dining room doors. Victor was in my seat. Maybe not my exact seat, but one that should never have been his before it was mine. Victor had stolen payroll money 5 years earlier when the inn still hosted weddings. Everyone knew. My mother said he had been in a hard season. He was forgiven, fed and seated near the front. I'd saved the tax plan, grant file and repair records. I got the basement. Dad lowered his voice. Please do not make this about your feelings. That was the sentence. Not the basement, not the missing chair. That sentence. Because he knew it would hurt, and he wanted me to carry the pain quietly so the night stayed pretty. I looked down at the blue envelope. He did too. Is that the agreement, he asked. I held it closer. It is. Good. Give it to Callum after dinner. Why Callum? His face hardened. Because he's taking over operations. My mouth went dry. That had never been said to me. Not once. I had been doing the work. But Callum was getting the title. Dad stepped closer. Nora, your brother is better with people. You're better behind the scenes. That's not an insult. But it was. It was the insult they had dressed as a compliment my whole life. Behind the scenes. Organised. Reliable. Good with details, useful words, cage words. The violin music started. Guests began moving toward their seats. My mother waved at me from the doorway, then pointed at the check-in table like I was late for my shift. I looked at my father one last time. If I go downstairs, I said. Do not expect me to come back up the same, he sighed. Always dramatic. I smiled then, a small smile, because for the first time, I was not hurt by the word. I was warned by it. When someone calls your boundary drama, they are telling you they benefited from your silence. I walked down the basement stairs, not because he won, because I needed one quiet minute before I changed everything. The basement smelled like bleached potatoes and old carpet. There were 2 folding tables for staff plates, a stack of napkins, and a metal chair near a freezer. I sat down. Above me, I could hear applause. My father was probably starting his speech. I opened the blue envelope and pulled out the foxglove letter. Then I pulled out the preservation agreement. One document would protect the inn. The other proved my family planned to betray it. For 18 months, I had asked myself how to save the Blue Heron, but sitting in that basement, under a buzzing light with my name missing from every table upstairs, I finally asked a better question. Who was I saving it for? My phone buzzed. A text from Callum. Need the envelope now. Dad says stop being weird. Then another. Investors are waiting. I stared at the word investors. Not family, not guests. Investors. And that was when the last piece clicked into place. The bank manager was not there for my parents' anniversary. The mayor was not there for a nice dinner. The Ashfords were not just old friends. This was not only a gala. This was a sale meeting with candles. I stood so fast the metal chair scraped the floor. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Callum's voice came down before he did. Nora? Hand me the envelope. I folded the foxglove letter once, placed it back inside the blue envelope, and looked toward the stairs. Because now I knew the truth, and this time I was not going to be the woman behind the scenes. Callum came down the basement stairs like he owned the whole building. Slow steps, one hand on the railing, that easy smile on his face. The same smile he used when he wanted people to believe he was calm, smart, and in control. But I knew my brother. Callum was never calmer than when he was trying to take something. Nora, he said, stopping 3 steps from the bottom. Give me the envelope. I held it at my side. What are the investors waiting for? His smile twitched. What? You texted me that the investors are waiting. Not guests. Not family. Investors. Why are investors waiting at Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner? He sighed like I was wasting time. Because adults talk business when opportunity is in the room. There's a preservation agreement in this envelope, I know. And if it's signed, the Blue Heron can't be sold to a private developer for 15 years without penalties. He came down the last steps, which is why we're not signing it tonight. The basement seemed to get colder. I had known it. I had read the foxglove letter. I had seen the note in his handwriting. Still, hearing him say it out loud made my stomach turn. So what was the plan, I asked. Take the grant repairs, show off the restored dining room, make everyone think the inn is safe, then sell it. Callum's face hardened. You make it sound dirty. It is dirty. Nor it's practical. The inn is a money pit. Dad's tired. Mom's tired. I'm the only one thinking ahead. I almost laughed. You are not thinking ahead. You are thinking about a payout. And what's wrong with that? He snapped. Grandpa bought low. Dad held it. Now it's worth something. That's business. That's not what the grant was for. The grant hasn't paid out fully yet, but the work already used approved funds. He waved his hand. Paperwork. That word told me everything. To Callum, paperwork was just something boring people handled so bold people could profit. But paperwork is not decoration. Paperwork is memory with a signature. It remembers what people agreed to when their mouths start changing the story. I looked at him and said, You were going to let me hand over the one document that could protect this place, then bury it. He stepped closer. You don't understand how the real world works. There it was. The sentence men like Callum use when they have no clean answer. I was the one who had spent 18 months fixing tax records, reading grant terms and pulling land files from county storage. But now he was teaching me the real world. Explain it, I said. He blinked. What? Explain the real world to me. Explain why the bank manager is upstairs. Explain why the Ashfords are at table 1. Explain why Foxglove Development sent you a letter of intent 6 weeks ago. His face went blank, just for a second. Then he smiled again. Wrong move. People smile too late when they are caught too fast. You went through my files. I found a folder labeled beverage menus. You had no right. I had every right to read documents about a property I spent 18 months saving. He pointed at me. You are an employee of the county. You should know better than snooping. I was not acting as a county employee. I was acting as the unpaid person your family calls when they ignore tax notices. He took a breath through his nose. Nora, listen to me. Give me the envelope. Go upstairs, smile, eat dinner, and stop trying to turn everything into an investigation. That was the funny part. I had not turned anything into an investigation. They had left clues everywhere, unopened notices, missing seats, hidden buyers, a developer letter in a fake menu folder, my name off the guest list but my work all over the walls. Bad lies are loud if you know how to listen. From above us came applause. My father's voice rolled through the old vents. Tonight is about family, faith, and the future of the Blue Heron. Callum looked up, annoyed. That's my cue. Your cue for what? He smiled again. This time it was ugly. Dad is announcing me as operations director. The words hit, but they did not surprise me. I think part of me had already known. You never ran operations. I will now. You don't know the tax schedule. I'll hire someone. You don't know the grant rules. That's what consultants are for. You don't know the history of the trust. His jaw tightened. That's what lawyers are for. And you don't know the difference between owning a legacy and cashing one out. For the first time, his face lost all charm. You always do this, he said. You act like being useful makes you important. I felt that sentence land in my body, not because it was new, because it was finally honest. That was what he thought of me. Useful, not central, not respected. Useful, a drawer you open when you need a tool. I looked at the basement around us, the freezer humming, the staff table half covered with foil pans, the stairs leading up to candlelight and applause. My whole place in the family had been shown to me in one picture. They celebrated upstairs. I carried the envelope downstairs. That is the moment I want you to notice. In life, people will often tell you they value you. Do not only listen to the words. Watch where they seat you when other people are watching. Your place in public often tells the truth your family hides in private. Callum held out his hand. Last chance. Envelope. I shook my head. No. He laughed once. You don't get to say no. This is not yours. The inn is not yours either. It will be. No, Callum, it won't. He stared at me. What did you do? I did not answer. He stepped forward, but stopped when the basement door opened again. My mother stood at the top of the stairs. Her blue dress caught the light from the hallway behind her. She looked perfect from a distance, like a woman in an anniversary photo. But up close, her face was tight with fear. Nora, she said, your father is about to introduce Callum. Please do not embarrass us. I looked at her. Did you know? Her hand gripped the railing. Know what? About Foxglove. Silence. Callum looked away. That was answer enough. I felt something break, but not loudly. It was more like a thread snapping, one small piece of hope giving up. You knew, I said. Mom came down 2 steps. Your father needed options. The grant rules were clear. Your father has carried that building his whole life. No. Grandpa carried it, then I carried it. Dad gave speeches about it. Her eyes filled with tears. I had seen those tears before. They appeared whenever accountability got close. Nora, please, this night matters to him. This building matters to more people than him. He is your father. I know, then act like it. That sentence would have worked on me a year earlier, maybe even 6 months earlier. It would have made me shrink. It would have made me apologize. It would have made me hand over the envelope, walk upstairs, and spend the rest of the night pretending I had not been pushed into the basement. But something about standing under a low ceiling while my mother defended a lie made the old guilt lose its teeth. I am acting like his daughter, I said. I am stopping him from doing something he may not survive legally or publicly. Callum laughed. Listen to yourself, you sound insane. No, I sound like the only person who read the documents. Mom came down the rest of the stairs. Nora, give me the envelope. Her voice was soft. Too soft, the kind of soft that expected obedience. I held the envelope behind my back. No, her face changed. Nora Elizabeth Vale. Full name. The old command. The one that used to make me feel 12 years old. I looked at her and said, full names do not work on full adults. She looked stunned. Good. Some people are shocked when the button they installed in you stops working. Callum checked his watch. We don't have time for this. I looked at him. You had 18 months to tell the truth. Then I walked past him toward the stairs. He moved to block me, not touching me, just standing in the way. I stopped 1 step below him. Move, you are not going upstairs with that. Then I'll call Lydia from here. His eyes narrowed. Who is Lydia? Attorney for the Preservation Trust. Mom sucked in a breath. Callum said, You called a lawyer. I looked at both of them. You planned a sale around a grant agreement and thought I wouldn't. That was when my father appeared at the top of the stairs. He had the microphone still in his hand. Nora, he said, voice low and dangerous. What is going on? Behind him I could see faces in the hallway. Guests had heard something. The perfect night had a crack in it now. Dad hated cracks. Callum stepped back just enough for me to climb the stairs. I reached the top and stood in the hallway between my father and the ballroom. The music had stopped. The guests were turning in their chairs. The blue ribbons on every seat looked suddenly childish. Dad leaned close. Give me the envelope. No. His eyes went cold. You are making a scene. No, Dad. I am refusing to help you hide one. For a moment, the room behind him seemed to hold its breath. My mother came up behind me. Nora, please, Callum whispered, don't do this. I looked at the dining room, at Victor sitting near the front like a trusted man, at the bank manager with his hands folded, at the Ashfords watching too carefully, at the mayor pretending not to listen, at the donor wall where my name did not appear, and I realized I did not need to give a speech. Speeches were my father's weapon. Documents were mine. I walked to the check-in table, the same table they had wanted me to work all night, and placed the blue envelope on top of it. Then I opened it. Dad said, "Nora," I ignored him. I pulled out the preservation agreement first. "This is the final agreement required for the Blue Heron Inn to receive and keep its restoration funding," I said. My voice shook at first, then steadied. "It protects the building from private sale for 15 years and keeps the inn tied to community use." The room was quiet now. Not polite quiet, hungry quiet. I pulled out the Foxglove letter. "And this is the letter of intent from Foxglove Development, offering to buy the property after grant repairs are completed." A woman gasped. Someone whispered, "What?" The bank manager leaned forward. Dad's face went red. "That is private family businesses." I turned to him. "No, once public grant money is involved, it is not just private." That was the adult lesson hidden under all the drama. When you take public help, public rules follow. When you sign grant papers, you are not just making a promise to your family, you are making a promise to the program, the taxpayers, and the community the money is meant to serve. My father stepped toward me. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." Callum pointed toward the door. "She's upset because she didn't get a seat." That was his mistake. People had been curious before. Now they were interested. Because everyone understands a missing seat. It is simple. It is visual. It tells people where the insult began. I looked at him. "You're right. I did not get a seat. But that is not why I'm upset. I'm upset because you wanted my work, my silence, and my documents, but not my name." The bank manager stood. "Edward," he said to my father, "is the property under sale discussion?" Dad opened his mouth. No words came. Callum answered too fast. "Exploratory only." The Ashfords exchanged a look. The mayor cleared his throat. My father lowered the microphone. For the first time all night, he looked old. Not weak, not sorry. Old in the way people look when the story they tell about themselves stops working. I placed both documents back into the envelope. Then I looked at the room. "I am leaving now. The preservation attorney will receive copies of these tonight. Anyone involved in funding, lending, or buying should request full disclosure before signing anything." Then I turned to go. My mother grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough. I looked down at her hand. She let go. "Nora," she whispered, "you will destroy this family." I looked at her and said the truest thing I had said all night. "No, I'm just refusing to be the part that keeps the lie standing." Then I walked out through the front door. Not the basement, not the staff hall, the front door. Outside, the night air was cool and wet. Rain had just started, soft enough to look silver under the parking lot lights. I got into my car and locked the doors. Only then did my hands start shaking. People think courage feels strong. Sometimes it feels like nausea, trembling fingers, and the strange need to breathe through your mouth so you do not fall apart before you get home. I drove 3 blocks, pulled into a closed pharmacy parking lot, and called Lydia. "She everything okay?" "No," I said. "But I have the documents." "Can you send them tonight?" "Yes, do that. And Nora, yes, do not discuss this with your family by phone. Put everything in writing." That became my rule. Everything in writing. It is a simple rule, but it changes everything. People who use confusion hate written records. They hate dates. They hate exact words. They hate when the soft fog of family talk turns into clean sentences. At home I scanned the documents. The preservation agreement, the Foxglove letter, Callum's handwritten note, copies of the grant terms, a timeline of repairs and payments. Then I emailed everything to Lydia. At 12:16 a.m. I sent one more email to my family. I am no longer acting as unpaid coordinator for the Blue Heron Inn, the grant process, family events, vendor accounts, repair schedules, or public communications. Future questions about the preservation agreement should go through legal counsel. I will not discuss business matters by phone, Nora. I did not write, "I'm sorry," because I was not. I did not write, "I love you," because they would have used that sentence as a door. I did not write, "Please understand," because I was done begging people to understand what they had chosen not to see. The next morning, my phone looked like a storm had passed through it. 29 missed calls, 15 texts, 3 voicemails. Dad's first message was cold. "You embarrassed me in front of half the town." Callum's first message was ugly. "You have no clue what you just cost us." Mom's first message was soft. "Please call me, your father did not sleep." That was the one that almost got me, not Dad's anger, not Callum's threats, Mom's sadness. For years, my mother had never needed to order me when she could make me feel responsible for someone else's pain. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table. I listened to the rain hit the window. Then I wrote on a sticky note and placed it beside my laptop. Their discomfort is not my emergency. I needed to see it in front of me. By noon, the first outside call came. It was from the grant office. A woman named Serena asked if I was willing to provide a statement about the timeline and my role in preparing the application. I said yes. She asked if I had any reason to believe the family intended to sell the property after repairs. I looked at the foxglove letter on my desk. Yes, I said, I do. By Friday, the grant funds were frozen, not cancelled, frozen. That distinction mattered. The building was not doomed. But the money would not move until the ownership, sale intent, and preservation agreement were reviewed. My father called that betrayal. Lydia called it incompliance. I started to like accurate words. They were less dramatic but stronger. Compliance, disclosure, liability, documentation, consent. Those words do not scream, they stand. The following week, the town newspaper published a short update. Questions raised over Blue Heron Inn preservation funding. No names beyond public record, no scandal language. Just enough to make people ask what happened after the gala. And people did ask. Bellwether was small. People had seen the dining room freeze when I opened that envelope. People had seen me leave through the front door. People had seen Dad try to smile afterward and fail. By the end of the week, everyone knew there was a developer. Everyone knew Callum had been planning something. And everyone knew I had been the one doing the paperwork. That last part mattered more than I expected. Not because I wanted praise, because truth is easier to breathe around than silence. The first person to call me and not ask for anything was Mrs. Havelock. She was 79 and had played piano at the Blue Heron every Sunday. Branch, when I was little, she said, "Your grandfather told me once that buildings remember who loves them properly. I think he'd be proud of you." I cried after that call, just once. Then I got back to work, not for my family, for myself and for the record. 3 weeks after the gala, the county sent notice that the Blue Heron trust documents had to be corrected before any transfer, sale or funding decision could continue. That meant no quick sale, no quiet investor dinner, no options, no pretty speech over dirty paperwork. Callum texted me one line. "You emptied the inn." He meant it as an accusation. But he was partly right. A week after the notice, Foxglove pulled out. The Ashfords withdrew interest. The bank delayed financing. The local sponsors asked to be removed from promotional materials until the review was done. My father's office at the inn, the one he used for meetings and old photos, was packed into boxes because the trust review required full access to records. By the end of the month, the Blue Heron felt hollow. No gala flowers, no investor folders, no false future dressed in blue ribbon. Just an old building on a hill waiting to learn who it belonged to. And then Lydia called. Her voice was careful. "Nora, there is something in the original trust file you need to see." I gripped the phone. "What kind of something?" "A clause your grandfather added before he died." My heart started beating faster. "What does it say?" She paused. "It says if any trustee attempts to sell the inn for private development against preservation terms, voting control transfers to the named preservation steward." I could barely breathe. "Who is the named preservation steward?" Lydia was quiet for 1 second. Then she said, "You are." For a moment I could not speak. The rain was tapping against my kitchen window. My laptop was open in front of me. The blue envelope sat on the table like it had a heartbeat. Lydia had just said my name. "Preservation steward, me." I gripped the fur tighter. "That can't be right," I said. "I checked it twice," Lydia replied. "Your grandfather added the clause 14 months before he died. It names you directly." I stood up too fast, then sat back down because my knees felt weak. "Why would he do that?" Lydia's voice softened. "I can't answer that as your attorney. But as someone who reads family documents for a living, I can tell you this. People often write what they cannot say out loud." I looked across my apartment at the small framed photo on my shelf. Grandpa Samuel standing on the Blue Heron porch, one hand on the railing, smiling at something outside the picture. I was 16 when he died, old enough to remember his voice, young enough to still think adults told the truth. He used to let me sit behind the front desk with him on slow afternoons. While Callum ran through the halls, charming guests and stealing peppermints from the bowl, I helped Grandpa sort keys, stamp envelopes, and fold reservation cards. He called me his steady girl, not flashy, not loud, steady. At the time, I thought it meant boring. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with my name hidden inside an old trust document, I wondered if steady had been the highest compliment he knew how to give. Lydia continued, "The clause does not give you personal ownership. I want to be clear about that." "Good," I said. She paused, maybe surprised. "Good? I don't want to own the inn. That was true. I wanted the lie to stop. I wanted the building protected. I wanted my name removed from unpaid labor and placed where it actually belonged." But I did not want to become another person using the Blue Heron as proof of my worth. Lydia said, "The clause gives you voting control over preservation decisions if the trustees attempt a sale that violates the purpose of the trust. With the foxglove letter and your brother's note, there is a strong argument the clause has been triggered. What happens now? We file notice with the court and the trust board. Your father can contest it, will he?" Yes, she did not soften it. I appreciated that. By then I had become tired of soft words hiding hard facts. "Can he win?" I asked. "He can make noise. Winning is different." That became the next 3 months of my life. Noise. My father noise. Callum made noise. My mother made quiet noise, which was worse. Dad called me ungrateful. Callum called me a thief. Mom left voicemails that started with, "I don't know how we got here," even though I had shown them the map. Every message had the same hidden sentence: "Come back to your place. Fix this. Be useful. Be quiet. Give us the envelope." But the envelope had already done its job. The week after Lydia filed notice, the court froze any private sale of the Blue Heron Inn until the trust question was settled. Foxglove Development formally withdrew. The bank requested updated records. The grant office opened a compliance review. The town started talking. At first, the story was messy. People said I was trying to steal the inn. People said Callum had almost saved the family business until I ruined it. People said my father was heartbroken. People said a lot of things because people love a story where they do not have to check documents. But then the documents became part of the public record. Not all of them. Enough. The preservation clause, the foxglove letter, the grant condition. The fact that my name had been on nearly every repair file, county contact, and funding submission. Then the story changed, not overnight. Truth is slower than gossip, but it lasts longer. Mrs. Havelock, the old piano player, wrote a letter to the editor saying the Blue Heron had always belonged to the town in spirit, even when the Vale family held the keys. A former cook wrote that my grandfather used to let church groups use the dining room for free after floods. A retired teacher posted a photo from her daughter's wedding at the inn in 1986 and wrote, "Samuel Vale would never have sold this place for townhomes. That one hurt my father. I know because he called me that night. I did not answer. He left a message. You turned everyone against me. I listened once. Then I wrote down what he had really said. The truth made people look at me differently, and I blame you. That is another adult lesson I learned. When someone says, you made me look bad, ask yourself if you lied or if you simply stopped helping them hide. I had not lied, I had stopped hiding. 2 months after the gala, we had the first court meeting. It was not dramatic like movies. No one shouted, no judge slammed a hammer. We sat in a plain room with beige walls. A long table, bad coffee, and a clock that ticked too loudly. My father sat across from me in a grey suit. Callum sat beside him, jaw tight, eyes angry. My mother was there too, holding tissues she had not used yet. Lydia sat on my right with a folder so neat it looked like it had never been touched by human hands. The trust attorney started with basic facts. The Blue Heron Inn was held in the Samuel Vale Family Trust. The trust included a preservation purpose. The trust named Edward Vale and Marianne Vale as managing trustees, with Callum as successor trustee. Then Lydia opened her folder, and the amendment dated May 4, 2010, names Nora Vale as preservation steward in the event trustees attempt transfer or sale for private development, in conflict with the preservation purpose. My father looked at the table. He had known about that clause by then, of course, but hearing it read out loud still bothered him. Because public truth has a different weight. The trust attorney asked Dad whether he had discussed sale terms with Foxglove Development. Dad cleared his throat. It was exploratory. That word again, exploratory. A clean shirt on a dirty plan. Lydia placed the letter of intent on the table. Foxglove outlined price, timeline, zoning expectations, and post-restoration valuation. The handwritten note says, wait until grant repairs are finished. Sell after gala. Clean title first. Callum leaned forward. That note was private. Lydia looked at him. That does not make it irrelevant. I nearly smiled. Not because I was happy, because accurate words were becoming my favorite kind of justice. Dad finally looked at me. Nora, do you understand what you are doing to your family? The old question, the old hook. I felt it catch for 1 second, then slide off. Yes, I said. I am asking us to tell the truth about a building we all claim to love. His face twisted. You think you're better than us because you read forms? No, I said. I think forms remember what people promised. The room went quiet. My mother looked at me then, really looked. For once, not like I was a task, or a daughter making trouble, or the person who knew the password. Like she was seeing someone she had trained herself not to see. The court did not decide everything that day. Real life takes longer. But a temporary order placed preservation decisions under my control and required all trust actions to be reviewed. The Blue Heron could operate, but not sell. Grant funds could resume only if the trust signed the protection agreement and appointed an independent board for public use. Programming. My father hated it, Callum hated it more. I did not enjoy that. That surprised me. I thought winning would feel like heat, like victory, like music swelling in a movie. It felt like sitting very still while a heavy door closed behind me. Safe, yes, but sad, because a part of me had still hoped my father would choose the inn before a judge made him. The next step was the board. Lydia suggested 5 members, 1 preservation expert, 1 community arts representative, 1 financial officer, 1 family representative, 1 public member. Dad wanted Callum as the family representative. I said no. Callum laughed in my face. You don't get to erase me. I'm not erasing you, I said. I'm saying you cannot oversee the thing you tried to sell. He turned to Mom. Are you hearing this? Mom looked down. That small silence told me something had changed. Not enough, but something. The family seat eventually went to my mother. At first I thought that was a mistake. Mom had spent years smoothing over Dad's choices and calling it peace. She had used tears like curtains. She had asked me to understand things that should never have been asked of me. But at the first board meeting, she arrived with a notebook. A real one, not for show. She wrote things down. When the preservation expert explained why the original porchwood needed special treatment, Mom asked 2 careful questions. When the financial officer reviewed the grant restrictions, Mom asked for a copy of the reporting calendar. When the arts representative proposed free Sunday matinees for seniors, Mom said my grandmother would have loved that. I watched her across the table, confused by my own feelings. Anger was easier when people stayed exactly who they had been. Change, even small change, made everything more complicated. After the meeting, Mom approached me in the lobby. The lobby was quiet, no gala candles, no ribbon chairs. Just afternoon light on the old floorboards. She held her notebook against her chest. I did not know how much you were doing, she said. I wanted to say yes you did, because part of her did, but I waited. She looked toward the front desk. I think I knew enough to feel relieved when you handled it, and I called that relief, love. That was the first honest sentence she had given me. I did not forgive her in that moment. Forgiveness is not a vending machine where someone inserts one apology and gets full access back. But I did breathe easier. Thank you for saying that, I said. She nodded. Then she said, your father is not ready. I know. Callum is angry. I know that too. She looked at me. I'm not asking you to fix either of them. That was the second honest sentence. I carried it home like something fragile. The Blue Heron reopened again in spring. Not as my father's stage, not as Callum's asset, as a protected heritage inn and community dining hall. That sounds fancy, but the reality was simple. Saturday breakfasts, small weddings with fair prices, a public history room, monthly river concerts, school field trips. A rule that no trustee could profit privately from a sale. The first community event was a free supper for flood volunteers. A storm had hit the county hard that year, and the Blue Heron dining room filled with firefighters, nurses, road workers, church ladies, teenagers in muddy boots and old men who argued about the best way to stack sandbags. I stood near the back with a coffee cup, watching people eat at the tables my family once used to measure status. No blue ribbons, no donor wall, no secret buyer, just food, light, and people who had spent the week helping each other. Mrs. Havelock played piano near the fireplace. The old songs sounded better in a room that was no longer lying. Dad came that night. I did not expect him. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, coat still on, looking at the room like he had arrived at a place he knew and did not know. Callum was not with him. Mom was. She went to help refill coffee. Dad stayed by the door. I walked over. Hi, I said. He nodded. Nora. No sweetheart, no dramatic speech. Just my name. For him, that was a start. He looked around the room. Your grandfather would have liked this. Yes, I said. I think he would have. His mouth tightened. I thought keeping the inn in my control was the same as keeping it in the family. I waited. He looked at the floor. But I think maybe I was keeping it from becoming what he wanted. That was close to an apology. Close, but not all the way. Old me would have accepted it anyway. Old me would have rushed to comfort him. Old me would have said, you did your best. New me let the sentence remain unfinished. Dad looked at me. I should not have sent you downstairs. There it was, specific, plain, no poetry, no excuse. The first true apology is often smaller than you imagine. It does not repair the house. It unlocks one room. I said, no, you should not have. He nodded. I was ashamed that I needed you, and I handled that by acting like your help didn't count. I felt my eyes burn. Not because the wound was gone, because he had finally named it. I needed to hear that, I said. He swallowed. I don't know how to fix it. You don't fix it with one conversation. I figured you fix it by not asking me to disappear again. He looked toward the dining room, then back at me. I can try, that was honest enough, not perfect. Try, I could work with try, from a distance, with boundaries. Callum did not come around for a long time. The developer deal disappearing cost him more than money. It cost him the story he had built about himself. He had wanted to be the man who turned an old inn into a fortune. Instead, the town saw him as the man who almost sold his grandfather's legacy after public money repaired it. He hated me for that, at least at first. 6 months after the trust order became permanent, I received an email from him. No greeting, just 2 lines. I still think you went too far. But I should not have tried to make you carry the work and then cut you out. I read it twice. That was not a full apology. It was a crack in the wall. I did not reply right away. Then I wrote back, that is the first true thing you have said to me in a while. He did not answer. That was fine. Not every relationship needs a neat bow. Some people become safer only when they are farther away. A year after the gala, the Blue Heron held an anniversary dinner. Not my parents' anniversary, the inn's anniversary. 53 years since my grandfather reopened the burned boarding house as the Blue Heron Inn. This time, I did not plan the whole thing. A committee did. I did not make the seating chart. Someone else did. I did not call the caterer, print the programs, or chase the photographer. I arrived 10 minutes early in a navy dress, carrying nothing but a small purse. That felt strange. Free but strange. When I walked into the dining room, the tables were set with white cloths and small blue flowers. The fireplace glowed. The old beams looked warm in the light. I saw the seating chart near the door. For 1 second, my body remembered the last time. The missing name. The basement, the staff meal. I took a breath and looked. Table 1, Nora Vale. My name was there, not in tiny letters, not added later, not near the kitchen door. Table 1. Beside my mother, Mrs. Havelock, the preservation expert, and 2 students from the youth theatre programme. My father was at table 2. Callum was not listed. I stared at my name longer than I meant to. Then a young volunteer walked over and said, Miss Vale, would you like me to show you to your seat? I almost cried. Not because a seat fixes everything, because after years of standing behind the scenes, being expected at the table felt like learning a new language. During dinner, a student stood to read from an old interview with my grandfather. His voice was shaky but clear. An inn is not a house you own, he read. It is a light you agree to keep on for other people. I looked down at my plate. That was what my father had forgotten. That was what Callum had never understood. That was what my grandfather trusted me to remember. After dessert, the board unveiled the new lobby plaque. It had my grandfather's name at the top. Samuel and Ruth Vale, founders. Then the Blue Heron preservation story. At the bottom, in smaller letters, it listed the people who helped restore the inn. My name was there, Nora Vale. Records research and preservation stewardship. Simple, accurate. Enough. I touched the edge of the plaque with 2 fingers. For most of my life, I thought being loved meant being needed. I thought if I became useful enough, steady enough, quiet enough, my family would finally look at me and say, you belong here. But belonging that depends on your usefulness is not belonging. It is employment without pay. And love that requires you to stay behind the scenes is not love. It is control wearing a family name. Today, the Blue Heron Inn still stands on the hill above the river. The porch railings are original. The roof does not leak. The dining room is open 3 nights a week. Students perform there in the summer. Seniors get free coffee on Wednesday mornings. Couples still take wedding photos under the oak beams. My father attends board meetings now, not as the man in charge, but as a man learning to listen. My mother volunteers with the history room and has become very strict about labelling photo boxes correctly. Callum moved 2 towns away and works in commercial leasing. We speak at holidays carefully. That may be all we ever manage. And me? I still work for the county. I still read records. I still believe paperwork tells the truth by accident. But I no longer confuse being the person who can fix everything with being the person who must. Sometimes I visit the Blue Heron alone. I sit in the main dining room, usually near the window, and drink coffee while the river moves below the hill. Nobody asks me to check the guest list. Nobody hands me a clipboard. Nobody points me toward the basement stairs. And if something breaks, I do not jump up right away. I finish my coffee first. That may sound small, but for someone who spent years living like every problem was an alarm, finishing a cup of coffee can feel like freedom. So here is what I want you to take from my story. Do not let people hide your name behind your labor. Do not let family history pressure you into saving people from the consequences of their own choices. Do not sign, file, organize, or rescue anything you are not allowed to question. And if someone wants your work but not your seat, pay attention. That is not humility they are asking for. It is disappearance. The night my father sent me downstairs, I thought I was being pushed out of my family, but I was really being pushed into the truth. The basement showed me where they thought I belonged. The documents showed me what my grandfather knew, and walking out the front door showed me who I could become when I stopped asking people to make room and started refusing rooms that required me to shrink. If you are the one everyone calls when papers are missing, bills are late, plans fall apart, or the family needs saving, ask yourself this: when the table is full, is your name on a chair? If not, maybe it is time to stop carrying the envelope. Maybe it is time to stop standing behind the scenes. Maybe it is time to let the truth enter the room before you do. Comment "my seat" if you would have walked out. Comment "blue envelope" if you have ever held the truth while everyone else held a lie. And subscribe if this story reminded you that your name matters, your work matters, and you do not have to disappear to prove you love anyone. Because the people who truly love you do not send you downstairs. They save you a seat before the music starts.